James Butler Hickok. Folks nowadays, they do like to call me Wild Bill. And I'm going to tell you some stories about myself and how I ended up here in Deadwood. I'm going to start after the Civil War. Now, I did fight during the Civil War. I was a scout and a spy for the Northern Army. But when the war ended, I was just like everybody else. I needed work. So I took off looking for work. I headed west. Now, I didn't get too far west before I stopped in my first town. There's a place called Springfield, Missouri. Now, Springfield, more of just a stopping point for me, but I did find the card game right away, and if you don't know anything else about me, surely you know that I ain't passing me up a good game of poker. Now, in this game, I played with a fella by the name of Davis Tutt. And Davis, he was a southern boy, and of course I fought for the North during the war, so how we got along well enough to sit across the table from each other, I have no idea. Man, that guy really did not like me at all. You know, come to think of it, it might have had something to do with me seeing his girlfriend. Well, that's a story for a different time. Now, we played cards, we played for a few days. Unfortunately, I ended up owing him about $35. Now, $35 being quite a sum of money that I didn't have, and Davis really wanted some collateral, I didn't know what I was going to do. All I had was an old pocket watch that my daddy had given me, and I wasn't about to give that up. But Davis, he was relentless. He wanted something to ensure him that he was going to get his money back. So, reluctantly, I did end up giving him that pocket watch, but I told him, I said, now Davis, don't be going around telling everybody how you took that from me in a card game, because that ain't how it happened. That watch means a whole lot more to me than $35, and I'm getting it back. Well, the very next day, here's Davis Tutt in the streets of Springfield swinging that watch around, taunting me with it. Well, I yelled at him across the town square, told him to knock it off, but he didn't want to listen. He yells back at me, I yell back at him. Then what's he do? He pulls out a gun and he takes a shot at me. Landed right at my feet. Well, if you know anything about the West, you don't take a shot at somebody unless you expect one coming right back at you. And I don't miss. I lined up and Davis 75 yards across that town square with my .36 caliber black powdered pistol. Bang! One shot right to the heart. Well, the authorities there in Springfield were none too happy with me shooting a fella down their streets. They arrested me. They told me that I was liable for the death of Davis Tutt. Well, I said, what about self-defense? He shot first. Yeah, all the witnesses on his side said he was just funning around. He wasn't really shooting at me. You know, I'm quite sure he doesn't think it's too fun anymore. Well, the judge saw it my way. Self-defense. I was acquitted there in Springfield, but I did figure it's about high time I got out of town. Now, as I'm leaving town, I run into another fellow who just happened to be at that gunfight. He saw the whole thing. He was a writer by the name of Henry Nickel. Now, Mr. Nickel, he wrote for Harper's Monthly. He wrote a lot of those dime novels out on the East Coast. Said he wanted to do an interview with me. Said the people out there, they needed a hero of the new frontier. And, well, I guess he was going to make me it. Now, in this interview, I did tell him some stories about myself, and yeah, maybe I exaggerated just a tad, but not nearly as much as he did. By the time he told that story, he had me killing over 200 people. Can you believe that? It was more like less than a half a dozen at this point. But it did make me famous. I went from being James Butler Hickok to being Wild Bill Hickok, the Prince of the Pistoliers, the greatest gunfighter the West had ever seen. And while the fame was nice, it kind of put a target on my back. Now every guy that had a gun wanted to be the guy that shot down the greatest gunfighter. Well, I had to be extra cautious from then on. I still need to get out of Springfield. Though acquitted, they were not happy about it. Well, I still needed work, so I took off and I headed west again. And I traveled across Kansas doing odd jobs just to survive. Drove a little freight for a while, scouted all over that place. As I'm out there scouting, I noticed a lot of small towns were sprouting up out there. Yeah, it seemed like everybody just kind of headed west on this big land grab, you know? Well, it also seemed to me, not a lot of them towns had any law in them to speak of. Kind of gave me an idea, maybe I should be a lawman. So that's what I did. Now, I cleaned up a lot of towns across Kansas. Places like Fort Riley, Wichita, Hays City, a couple more. Till I ended up in Abilene, Kansas. Now, see, Abilene, it was a rough cattle town. One of the roughest there was. Them cattle drives, they'd come through there, bring all sorts of outlaws and ruffians with them. They'd shoot up the town, scare the daylights out of the good folks there just trying to make a life for themselves. The people of Abilene, well, they were more than happy when they heard the great Wild Bill Hickok had taken the job as their marshal and was going to clean that place up. I got there, I laid down some new ground rules. Do not bring your guns to town. Certainly don't be shooting them off in city limits. But there was this guy. There's always this guy, right? Yeah, fellow by the name of Phil Coe. Phil, he was a Texas cattleman. He bought a bar there in Abilene, and I guess he had a little problem with my authority. See, I was a marshal. I laid down the rules and I enforced them. And Phil, he didn't want to follow the rules. He just wanted to argue with me about them all the time. Every day it seemed there was something new with that guy. Well, till early one evening, I'm sitting in the saloon, minding my own business, winding down from a long day's work, and I hear this ruckus in the street. People are screaming and hollering. Guns are going off everywhere. I run outside to investigate. And who is it? It's Phil Coe and all his friends shooting up the town, scaring everybody. Well, much like Davis, I yelled at him to knock it off too, but he didn't want to listen either. Pretty soon we got a big shouting match going on, and well, Phil reaches for his pistol. Big mistake. I'm quicker. I saw him reach for mine, drew for his bam. I shot him dead right there. But, like I said, he had all those friends with him. And they all had guns too. I'm by myself. I'm on the defensive. I looked up at them all and I yelled, "Who wants the rest of these?" Nobody said a word. Till I heard somebody yell my name from back in the alley. I turned quick, shot again. I shot my deputy, Mike Williams. Oh, you're laughing about that. Come on now. I shot my friend, my deputy. Boy, what a sick sense of humor. That was a bad day. I didn't much want to be a lawman anymore after that. So I gave it up, and I moved on. Oh, I bounced across Kansas again, doing the things I like to do, trying to make myself feel a little better. I mean, sure, I had a drink or several, but I did find good card games about any town I went to. Now, at this point in my life, after I'd shot my deputy in Abilene, well, my friends were worried about me. They said I was drinking way too much, spinning out of control, wasting my life away, and, well, they all wanted to give me a leg up of sorts. And when I run into Buffalo Bill Cody, now I know y'all know who that is, and Buffalo Bill and our other friend Texas Jack, they come up to me and say, Bill, we're taking a Wild West show out to the East Coast, and we would be honored if you would join us. Not doing much else at the time and really needing some money, I said, why not? Let's take that Wild West show out there and show them Easterners just how wild it really is out here. Truth be told, I didn't care for that. No, some people are showmen and some aren't. Buffalo Bill? Heck yeah, there's a showman for you. Me? Oh, not so much. You know, I did get into a little bit of trouble out there. See, my friend Buffalo Bill, he didn't think it was right that I was drinking and carrying on during the shows, and, well, he took my liquor away. And I'm here to tell you, it made me rather ornery. I shot the lights out of Madison Square Garden, shot a couple of extras with blanks, and started their pants on fire because I thought it was funny. Yeah, they didn't. I'd say by the end of it all, my good friend Buffalo Bill regretted every minute of taking me with on that tour. So I saved him the trouble of firing me and I quit. Oh, the West was calling me again anyhow. I had to get back out here. I ended up over there in Cheyenne, Wyoming territory. Now, when I got to Cheyenne, well, I found me a card game right away because that's just what I do. I played for a couple days, was doing pretty good. I look up from the table, and in walks a lady friend, Agnes Lake. Now, see, I'd known Agnes for years, and when we got back together, it was like we'd never left each other. I found out she was as fond of me as I was of her, so I asked her to marry me. You know what she said? Of course, she said yes. I wouldn't even tell the story if she said no. Jeez. Yeah, she did say yes. We had a nice little wedding, and I whisked her away on a honeymoon to Cincinnati. Oh, now you're laughing at Cincinnati? Yeah. It's a Queen City and riverboats and everything. Is that where you're from? No. No? Is that where you went on the honeymoon? No. No? Well, then what? At least it wasn't Cleveland. Oh. I shouldn't say that. People in Cleveland get mad at me. Anybody here from Cleveland? Yeah, what are the odds, right? Well, we honeymooned in Cincinnati for a short spell, but Agnes, she had worked there. She's run the circus by this time, and well, I had to get back out here, so I left her there and I headed back west. Oh, I figured to myself, Cheyenne seemed like a right fine town. Maybe that's where I'll go start working on a fortune so me and Agnes can retire. Turns out, Cheyenne was not nearly as good to me as I'd initially hoped. Oh, I went on this long streak of bad luck, you see. I lost all my money at the card tables. I ended up penniless in the streets of Cheyenne. You know what they did to me there? They arrested me. They told me I was a vagrant. They told me to leave Cheyenne right now or spend the rest of my time there in the jailhouse. Now, not wanting to spend a whole bunch of time in the Cheyenne jail, I did heed that warning and I left. But as I got to the outskirts of Cheyenne, I run into this big wagon train. Biggest one I'd ever seen. And I look up front and who's running the thing? None other than my best friend in all the world, Colorado Charlie Utter. You guys know Colorado Charlie? No. Nobody does? What, do you live under a rock? He's famous. No? No? Well, maybe you should read a little bit then. Now, Charlie and I, we've been best friends ever since I was marshal in Hays City. And he got so excited when he sees me, pulls up that wagon train, I'm out there, he gets this big grin on his face. He says, Bill, get on this wagon train with us. Huge gold strike in the Black Hills of Dakota territory. Tell you what, you come with us, I got a gold claim up there. You can work the claim, I'll drive freight back and forth and we'll split the money 50-50. Well, being as how it was for me there in Cheyenne, that was not a hard decision to make. I hopped that wagon train with him. All sorts of fine folks on there, over 200 of them. 70 plus wagons, all filled with goods for this town right here. Now we headed north out of Cheyenne, spent about a week and a half on the trail before we pulled up in Fort Laramie. Now, when we got to the fort, they were excited to see us because, well, some ladies had stopped by there and they're causing all sorts of trouble at that fort. The guys weren't getting their work done, they weren't getting any sleep at night. Oh, the colonel wanted them gone. He came right out the wagon train and says, "Fellas, get these women out of here. They're all sorts of trouble. I can't get anything out of my guys." We looked over, here's Dirty M and Madam Mustache. A little Tidbit was there. Well, this other scrungy looking fella actually turned out not to be a fella at all. I think you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, Calamity Jane. Now, I know you've been starting and spreading some rumors about myself and Calamity maybe somehow being romantically involved. Not true, come on. If you just seen her on that day, you'd know why. She looked like a man. She dressed like a man. She cursed like a man. She spit like a man. She drank like a man. She smelled like a man. Yeah, no thanks. Besides, didn't I just tell you all I was married? Yeah, them rumors get back to Agnes. I'm in all sorts of trouble. Now, I probably shouldn't talk bad about Calamity because for all the problems that she had, and I don't know anybody that doesn't have their problems, she had a heart of gold. If you had a problem and Calamity Jane was anywhere around, she'd help you out, I guarantee you, just the kind of person she is. Now, we did remain friends, and they all got on that wagon train. About another week and a half later, we pull up on the edge of town out here. We look down over this gulch, and it stinks something fierce. It was dirty and muddy and nasty. One street, Main Street, the horses, the cattle, the oxen, they'd go down the street and do their business. People would dump their garbage in the street. They dumped their chamber pots in the street. It was gross. Mud and muck about right here on Main Street. It never dried. We could probably lose some guys your size out there. Now, don't worry about it. It's fixed now. Well, you know, I was no different. And everybody still flooded in here because they didn't care what it smelled like or what it looked like. You know why? Because we had gold. Yeah, I wanted to make my fortune in gold too. I went right out to that claim that Charlie said we had. Well, I worked it, and I worked it really hard for about 3 hours. Yeah, I found out real fast that gold mining was not for me. But Deadwood, being what it is, all the people, the gold, the saloons, and gambling halls, well, it didn't take me long to find something else to do in this town. I was downtown playing cards. Now, seeing this table and those cards sitting idle like that, it's giving me quite an itching to play right now. I get 3 to volunteer to come on and play some cards with me. There's one right there. Come on up. There's one right there. Come on. I need one more card player and a bartender. There you go. You're a card player. I need a bartender. Charlie, you're over there. Captain, you're right there. Carl, you're over here. Harry, where you at? Come on, I need a bartender. It's easy. Well, he might be just a little bit too little to be a bartender. I mean, the child labor laws are a little different now. But you gonna be my bartender? All right, get behind the bar, Harry. Get to work. This place is a mess. All right, tell you what. I'm going to have a talk with these fellas, let them know what it's like to play cards here in Deadwood. I'm sure they know already. They look pretty seasoned. Then I'm going to go check on a horse for a second. Tell you what, listen to this guy right here. He's going to tell you all about what's going on in Deadwood right now. All right. How you doing, Harry?
Good.
No, you don't need your horse.
Is this The employees of the number 10 will set the scene for you, so sit back, hang on to your sarsaparilla, and we'll start going together. It was during the latter part of August 1875. Frank Bryant and a party of 7 gazed down into a gulch of tangled, broken trees, which from then on was to be known as Deadwood Gulch. They made their way to the bottom and began to pan for gold. Soon the cry of gold echoed up and down the canyon walls. They hastily built a crude cabin east of their find, but nevertheless went on to prospect throughout the northern hills, only to return on November 8, 1875, to post a claim of their discovery. On the very next day, November 9, 1875, a second group filed a claim just short of 3 miles up the creek. This outlined a stretch that was destined to become known as the richest placer claim area, not only in North America, but the entire Western Hemisphere. As news of this bonanza leaked out, the rush was on, resulting in a flood of mankind from all directions. The Army could no longer stop the invasion of the fortune hunters. By August 2nd of 1876, Deadwood Gulch, now known as Deadwood City, and often referred to as Sin City, had acquired a worldwide reputation as a booming metropolis. Its surrounding hills and creeks were loaded with gold. Even greenhorns were said to be able to find nuggets, well, as they put it, bigger than horse turds. Its streets were lined with substantial businesses, offering everything from an opera house to dance halls, saloons and banks, stores of every sort, but mainly saloons and gambling dens. Deadwood Gulch was jam-packed with every variety of mankind, good and bad. The likes of Wild Bill Hickok, Seth Bullock, Wyatt Earp, Calamity Jane, Colorado Charlie Utter, California Joe, and Preacher Smith. Somewhere between 4,000 to 6,000 of them. They came with greed or lust and high ideals, but the frenzied excitement that Deadwood provided well satisfied their pioneer spirits. 2 guys named Nuttall and Mann couldn't picture themselves seeking their fortune as prospectors, and instead built a house on their placer claim, number 10, which became known as Saloon number 10. On the morning of August 2nd, 1876, Harry Young was tending bar in the number 10. His hair was greased, as was customary for bartenders in gold camps. This was essential as part of a method used by bartenders to collect a little extra loot for themselves. Before reaching into a prospector's poke for a pinch of gold to collect for a given whiskey, the bartender would rub his fingers through his greasy hair, thus oiling them well. He would deposit the unoiled gold dust into the boss's tape, and by again rubbing his fingers through his hair, redeposit the oily flakes where it could be washed out later. It's said that there was a bald-headed barkeep who was known to have half a dozen hair pieces, all well oiled. His take was enormous, as the laundering process was more efficient. The dance hall girls had arrived on Colorado Charlie Utter's wagon train in late June, ready and willing to entertain the thousands of eligible prospectors. Some came with hopes of finding the right man. Others came simply to make their own fortune. Their attire, somewhat more revealing than what was thought to be proper, was looked down upon by those trained in ladylike etiquette, but nonetheless, they brought to the gold rush an air of reckless, dazzling excitement. By August 2nd, 1876, they were well established up and down Deadwood City's main street, working around the clock in one fashion or the other. Honky-tonk piano and their songs of promising spirit filled the air. Many an unlucky prospector could find hope for tomorrow, for he knew what the night would bring. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Wild Bill Hickok entered Saloon number 10, seeking a little poker action. Charlie Rich, a gambler from Cheyenne, Carl Mann, owner of Saloon number 10, and Captain Massey, a riverboat captain from Missouri, were engaged in a game of draw poker and were quick to invite Bill to join them. Wild Bill's reputation demanded that he be exceedingly cautious. For instance, he never liked to sit with his back to the door. The vacant seat was so located, and a lively debate between Charlie Rich and Bill resulted in an attempt on Bill's part to get Charlie's chair.
Oh, yes, it is.
Well, you don't know, it's a lucky chair. Well,
forget how lucky you think it is. I sit there, you know
Bill
it,
was
get
not given
out.
his request, and grudgingly, with great hesitation, took the empty chair. After a few minutes, he stood up and again asked Charlie for his chair.
Dang it, Charlie, I can't sit here, and you know it. Now get out of that stinking chair.
Bill didn't win this argument either, and on this rare occasion, he settled down, sitting with
Take
his
your
back
money
to
and
the
then I'll
door.
take your chair, Charlie.
Wariness, though, kept Bill
After
alert.
this guy,
For
Carl.
all knew him to be a left-handed drinker, leaving his right
Oh, you
hand
didn't even
free to
give me
handle
this.
his
Thanks a
pistol.
lot, guys. Give me the card.
As unpredictable as card games are, Bill found himself quickly losing to Massey, who had lost to Bill the night before. Bill asked Harry for $15 worth of pocket
$15 from you,
chips.
Harry.
Harry brought them over to Bill and returned to the bar and his duties.
Thank you very much.
Soon, a shifty drifter known as Jack McCall entered the saloon. Bill quickly turned while drawing his gun. Recognizing McCall as a newcomer to town, he greeted him with a friendly,
Howdy, Jack.
then reholstered his gun and resumed the game. Jack slowly circled the table, pausing briefly behind each player and analyzing each hand.
Pay no mind him. He's a dumb kid. Get out of here, kid. I know he ain't playing because he lost all his money to me last night.
What do you mean, no?
Oh, you
Money
really
first.
out here
While
just-
Bill's attention was on Massey, there was a friendly argument between them, and Wild Bill
That's your
remarked,
bet, Carl. All right.
upon returning directly behind Wild Bill, suddenly Jack McCall,
Take that, dang you!
the bullet struck Bill in the back of the head, coming out his left cheek and lodged in Captain Massey's left arm. It was discovered soon after the cards Bill was holding were aces and eights, forever known as the dead man's hand. All fled the saloon except Carl Mann, who was held at bay by McCall. Jack snapped the trigger of his gun several times. It failed to fire. He then ran out the door and up the street. He was found hiding in a building behind a butcher shop. Later on in the day, he was tried in a miner's court. The jury, being tainted and influenced by a deceitful defense, found McCall not guilty, and he was released. This decision not only outraged the judge, but also the general populace. McCall left the camp in haste. Upon reaching supposed safety in Wyoming, he began bragging of his ignoble deed. Word of this reached a U.S. Marshal who tracked McCall down, arrested him, and sent him to Yankton to be tried again in Dakota Territory. It was determined, since the first trial was held in Indian Territory, that it was not legal. McCall was found guilty and hung for his cowardly crime. He was buried in an unmarked grave on the edge of town. Later, as the town grew, the cemetery was moved. As the coffins were opened, one corpse was found with a rope around its neck. It was easily identified as Jack McCall, the assassin of Wild Bill. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking the time to
Jack over here. Come on up, don't be shy. Hey, this is not a spit tube, neither do not spit in that thing. Deadwood allowed them capture that stinking Jack McCall right out in front of about 5-10 minutes. Then they dragged him up for trial at the Masons Hall. It's a great family show. Hope to see y'all there. Thank you so much for coming to the world famous Saloon. Have a great day.